The Downtown Shuffle. Reynardo shuffled his way along as fast as he could, taking care not to trip or stumble over the cracks and crevices in the sidewalk. The tree roots along the wooded area had taken over this part of the neighborhood sidewalk, running under and lifting up entire sections of the concrete, the roots burrowing their way through asphalt intersections to cross the street. It was a real safety hazard that he had attempted repeatedly to get someone in law enforcement to do something about. Weren't they supposedly public safety officers there to protect and serve? Whatever. He shuffled along as fast as he could. Taking another fall would not be a good thing. Every time he tried to move his left foot forward, it felt like someone had stuck a knife in his back left hip bone. He whimpered and kept on shuffling forward. Finally, he reached the first of the residential houses, and miracle of miracles, someone was outside pruning a hedge at the second house from the corner. He picked up his pace and hobbled towards the driveway, announcing himself as he got closer. "Hey there, neighbor, how's it going? How you doing? Can you help me out, please? I took a fall this morning. I'm hurting pretty bad here." He glanced up at the balding man holding a pair of brush clippers before him. Reynardo stopped about 10 feet away, hands held up in a no stranger danger from me here stance, and tried again. "I saw something in the quarry. I think you need to call the police. I saw something in a trash bag. Looked like animals. Might have got to it, maybe. I think the police should see it." He glanced at the man again, who had lowered the clippers to his side and stood looking at him, a puzzled frown creasing his forehead. "Haven't I seen you around here before? Aren't you the guy that's always picking up trash around here?" "Yeah, sure, that's me. They call me the trash man. Always picking up trash. No one asked me to do it. It just seemed like the right thing to do. But I ain't picking up that trash." I saw a face. It wasn't until that moment, when he heard the words come out of his mouth, that he realized what he had actually seen. A face, or part of a face more specifically, the top of a head maybe. He had definitely seen dark brown hair falling over a forehead, eyes staring. Reynardo looked at the man in some annoyance. "Are you going to call the cops?" The man shook his head as if to clear it. "Yeah, sure, I guess. Phone's here. Stay there. You'll have to talk to the police when they get here. Show them what you saw." He hadn't thought of that. He didn't like dealing with law enforcement. They had a tendency to take one look at him and toss him in the back of the patrol car for a trip downtown before even asking him any questions. Completely unfair. He never did anything wrong. Sleeping is not a crime. Shelter should be a right, not a privilege. Reynardo considered for a moment. "Okay, fine. I'll wait here, but I ain't waiting long. I fell hard on my hip here," and he patted his backside gingerly, wincing at the barest of touches. "Shit," he muttered. "Anyway, don't take your time about it, all right? I ain't getting any younger here, and whatever it was that was in that bag ain't getting any fresher if you take my meaning." "Right," said the man, setting the clippers on the ground and walking to the hood of his car where his phone was sitting, Spotify on True Country Mix currently playing Waylon Jennings. He turned off the music and dialed 911. By the time the cops showed up, Reynardo was really hurting. Leaning sideways and moaning, the man had eventually taken pity on him and brought out a kitchen chair for him, which Reynardo did not sit on, but instead used as a cane to lean on. If he sat down now, he was afraid he was not going to be able to get back up again. He watched as the patrol car pulled up. "Fletcher and Morin. Good morning, gentlemen. Nice to see you," he said laconically. "Reynardo, what kind of trouble are you trying to stir up now?" Fletcher asked as he got out of the patrol car. "Morin, call in our 1020, will you?" he called over his shoulder as he started up the driveway to Reynardo, and the man waited. "Listen, Officer Fletcher, I do not want to be here right now, okay? I was minding my own business, doing what I always do, picking up the trash that everyone else dumps." "Yeah, you mean dumpster diving," Fletcher muttered. "Look, I'm serious," he said, frowning at Fletcher. "I was looking for trash in the back end of the quarry where the little wooded park area is, you know? Anyways, I came around the corner of one of the rock piles and I saw something." He stopped and swallowed. "I saw a bag, a black trash bag, under a bush. It had something in it. I could see where the bag was ripped, like coyotes maybe were at it. He stopped and stood up straight. using the chair to push himself upright. He looked Fletcher in the eye and said, "I saw a face, a child's face. You better take a look. I'll show you." And he turned and started to shuffle down the sidewalk, half waving at the man in dismissal. "Whoa, hold on there, partner. No need to walk. Looks like you ain't feeling none too sprightly there. Well, why don't we take a drive over? You can tell us where to go. Come on, let's get in the car, Renardo." Renardo stopped, considering. He waved one eyebrow at Fletcher, who held up his hand and announced, "We ain't taking you to the station. You just tell us where to go, and we'll go take a look at this bag or whatever it was you found, okay?" "All right," he muttered, shaking his head. This was a bad idea. It had been a bad idea from the beginning. He should have just stayed in the park. He could be laying under a tree right now, soaking up the sun and dreaming of beaches in Cancun. But no, he had to be a good citizen and all that. Whatever. Fletcher helped him get into the patrol car, Renardo describing in detail how he had found the bag and his resultant fall. He was most emphatic that he was doing this out of the kindness of his heart, that his hip was really hurting him something fierce, and that maybe, instead of looking in the quarry, they maybe should just go to the hospital. He wasn't feeling very well at all. Fletcher glanced over at him and pursed his lips. Renardo really did not look good, even for him. He still smelled terrible. Old urine and stale beer combined with decaying food remains and the general body odor of someone who hasn't bathed for weeks. He smelled like Renardo. But his face was drawn and colorless, his breath coming in shallow gasps. Fletcher looked at his partner. Moran shrugged his shoulders. "Your call. I'm just the driver today, remember?" Fletcher sighed in exasperation and looked back at Renardo. "Let's just take a look at whatever you saw. It's why we're here after all, right? Then we'll take you to the hospital and get you checked out, okay?" Renardo nodded his head imperceptibly. He closed his eyes and swallowed hard. They drove down the backside of the residential block, skirting the small public park with its wooded perimeter, and turned right past the private property, no trespassing sign for the old quarry access road. They bumped along the dirt track until Moran hit a particularly large hole and Renardo swore out loud. Moran slowed the car down and they slowly rolled down the pitted pavement drive. The access road terminated in a small cleared area where thick scrub bushes and knotty pines softened the harsh outlines of piles of broken rock. Fletcher and Moran got out, Fletcher opening the door so Renardo could pull his way out of the back seat of the cruiser. It took the efforts of both Moran and Fletcher to finally extricate him while Renardo yelped and hollered. Finally, all three men stood panting beside the patrol car. There was no other sound. "Right. This way then. Follow me. Try to keep up," he said, ha-ha-haing as he started down the trail. Fletcher started to follow, motioning Moran to call in, then keep a 6. The two men made their way past waist-high scree piles, the brush just a pale green shade of the same gray as the rocky background. Eventually, Renardo recognized one of the tall piles of stone and stopped. "This is as far as I go. I ain't going no further. It's right around that pile there, just to the right. There's a bush, and there's a black bag under the bush." Fletcher glanced appraisingly at Renardo for a moment. "He's definitely not going to be making a fast getaway, that's for sure," he thought, and then nodded at Renardo and said, "I'll be right back," walking towards the rock pile. Fletcher rounded the corner and saw several large brushy areas, but one off to his right caught his trained eye. Something was there that did not belong. He glanced up and saw carrion birds circling high over his position. Strange that they weren't on the ground as well, but considering the racket Renardo had made just getting down the trail, maybe it wasn't all that surprising. He looked down at the trail in front of him, then considered the undisturbed sandy dirt surrounding the bush. If anyone had walked through here in the past month, he couldn't see any evidence of it. He clearly saw Renardo's shuffling slide tracking in a wavering line back behind him, and he saw his own clear footprints ending where he now stood. Nothing else. He pursed his lips, thinking again. Making his way along the edge of the dirt trail, trying to keep his footprints to the periphery, he stepped closer to the brush. There was definitely a black trash bag there, and he could see what Renardo had been trying to explain, the bag having been ripped open, maybe a foot, exposing what looked like hair and perhaps skin under that. It was hard to tell in the shadows, but he didn't need to get any closer to confirm what he was seeing. There was just the faintest scent of decay. No obvious sign of insects or any other predators, but he recognized what he was looking at. He scowled, mentally taking a series of snapshots in his mind of what he was sensing, while he quickly took out his phone and snapped the best pictures he could of the bag, the bush, and the surrounding area, then the pathway with his footsteps and Renardo's sliding trail fading into the dirt. He sighed and crossed himself, saying a quiet prayer for this child. His kids were at school, his wife working for the school's daycare center. This would never be one of his children, he swore. He sighed once more and headed back to where Renardo waited impatiently for him, muttering something unintelligible to himself. Renardo glanced at Fletcher, read his face, and nodded. Then the two men turned and headed back silently, Fletcher letting Renardo take the lead to shuffle along. They got back to the car, and Fletcher filled Moran in as they both helped Renardo get back into the cruiser. "You taking me to the hospital now, right?" "Yep, just let me call this in first," Fletcher replied, reaching for the radio.